History of Islam's Civil War after Sultan Muhammad. Fatih Sultan Bayazid II. Chapter 22. Civil War after Sultan Muhammad. Fatih, and the amazing story of Prince Jamshed. At the time of Sultan Fatih's death, he had two sons, Bayazid and Jamshed. Bayazid was the governor of the province of Asia Minor, and was residing in Amasia, while Jamshed was in charge of the Emiya governorate. At the time of Sultan Fatih's death, Bayazid was 35 years old and Jamshed was 22 years old. On the contrary, Jamshed was a very active and hard-working prince. At the time of Sultan Fatih's death, not one of these two princes was present in Constantinople. Muhammad Pasha was appointed as the prime minister in his place after being assigned to the military leadership. Muhammad Pasha, Prime Minister, wanted Prince Jamshed to be placed on the throne after Sultan Fatih. So he wanted to keep the death of Sultan Fatih a secret, and sent a message to Jamshed that he should immediately come to Constantinople. But this news could not remain hidden. Instead, Ishaq Pasha was made Prime Minister and sent word to Bayazid that Sultan Fatih had passed away. Immediately leave for Constantinople. This young thief, i.e. John Nisar's army, secretly created great disorder in Constantinople, extorted rupees from merchants and rich people, and occupied all the departments. Adhar commander Ahmad Kidiak, who occupied the city of Otranto in Italy, had made preparations for an army attack on Rome in the next spring and had fortified and strengthened Otranto in every way, so that this city can serve as a permanent and strong central position during future campaigns and battles. The Sultan was very saddened to hear the news of his death, and made the commander of the army there, gave proper instructions, and himself left for Constantinople to serve the new Sultan in the service of the new Sultan, and to return with permission, or to bring the Sultan himself to Italy. It was first known in Amasia, and from there he reached Constantinople with only 4,000 troops in a 2-story and 3-story invasion. We asked him to increase our salaries and jaggers and give us good rewards and honors, otherwise we will kill you right away. By approving it, he laid the foundation for the custom for the future that when a new sultan ascends the throne, he should give rewards and honors to the army and waste a large part of the royal treasury in this way. No strong arm will be able to be the example of the sultan and his father, but on the one hand, his older age than his brother Jamshed, on the other hand, the support of the minister Ishaq Pasha and the Nisari army led to the fact that the members of the Sultanate, despite the feeling that he was not a strong-hearted sultan, he could not dare to oppose him. After a few days, the army commander Ahmed Kaduk also arrived in Constantinople from Italy, because his rival Prime Minister Muhammad Pasha was an opponent of Bayazid and a supporter of Jamshed. Therefore, Ahmad Kidak also pledged allegiance to Sultan Bayazid II as soon as it happened. The news of his father's death reached Jamshed a little late. At that time Bayazid II had come to Constantinople and ascended the throne. Jamshed started capturing cities in Asia Minor, and wrote to his brother Sultan Bayazid II after capturing the city of Bursa, that Sultan Fatih had not made you his crown prince. Therefore, you alone have no right to become the ruler of all the empire. It is appropriate that the Asian conquests remain under my government, and you rule the European countries. Sultan Bayazid II rejected this request, and replied that 2 swords cannot be kept in one sheath. Sultan Fatih's sister and the paternal grandmother of these 2 brothers were present in Constantinople. He went to his nephew Sultan Bayazid II and explained to him that it is not good for the 2 brothers to fight, and it is appropriate that Jamshed should be given all the territory of Asia Minor. And he replied that as much as I can, Jamshed should go and settle in Baitul Maqdis with his family, and I will continue to send him a part of the income of the Crimea province for his living. Jamshed was aware that if I could not get the throne of the kingdom, Sultan Bayazid II would never leave me alive, so he was forced to protect his life, and should not neglect the effort to achieve the throne. Therefore, Sultan Bayazid II benefited from the ability and experience of his army commander Ahmad Khiduk and became determined to compete with his brother Jamshed. Therefore, according to 886 AH, on June 2, 1481, the two armies faced each other. Most of the chiefs of Jamshed's army came to the side of Sultan Bayazid II in the battle of their respective groups, and thus Jamshed had to be defeated by Sultan Bayazid II's army. Meanwhile, the two brothers were engaged in war in Asia Minor, while the Pope of Rome was preparing to flee from Rome after hearing the news of the death of the Sultan. He stayed in Rome and invited the Crusaders from the Christian countries of Europe to come and save Italy and take this opportunity to drive the Turks out of Otranto. The Christians ran and the Christian armies attacked Otranto and besieged it. In Asia Minor, when the armies of Sultan Bayazid II and Jamshid had reached each other, Christians made preparations to attack Otranto at the same time. The army of Otranto could not get any help from Constantinople. The Turks stood firm and fought against the Christian forces. But when they were disappointed by Constantinople, they sent a message to the Christians that we have full power of defense, and it is not an easy task for you to conquer us. But we do not think it worth while to fight and shed blood any longer. If you wish to take this city in peace, we are ready to hand it over to you, provided you allow us to depart from here with honor and peace to Constantinople. He wrote the document and sent it to the Turkey Sardar, through which the life and property of every member of the Ottoman army was given peace. Thus, after the completion of the peace treaty, the Turks opened the gate of the city and started preparing to leave the city after taking possession of the Christians. The streets of the city became a battlefield, and the Christians, surrounded on all sides, killed almost all the Turks in a very rude and indecent manner, and the streets of Otranto became red with the blood of the Turks. It was only after Sultan Bayazid II's accession to the throne that the Ottoman Empire suffered a severe and serious loss. That the nail that had gone into the country of Italy was uprooted and the door of the conquest of the country of Italy that the Turks had opened was closed. Again, the clouds of regret and despair that had covered the Church of Roma were suddenly removed, and the possibility of the great aid that was going to reach the weak Muslims of Andalus continued. He would come to this side after leaving and take revenge of his slain soldiers from the Italians. To Allah we belong and to him we shall return. Jamshed did not stay in Asia Minor after being defeated. And after inspecting the treachery of his companions, he did not think it proper to trust even a Turkish chieftain and governor of Asia Minor. But his foreboding vision made the kingdom of Egypt the most important for his safety and for the future contest. Did you think better in Egypt? The Mamluks ruled and the Chiraxid dynasty was ruled by the king Abu Sa'id Quaid Beg. Having been defeated by Bayezid, Jamshid left for Egypt with a few Nisar followers and his mother and wife. He had not yet left the boundaries of the Ottoman Empire when a Turkish leader raided his caravan and looted all the equipment that was with Jamshid. He reached Constantinople with the looted goods of Sultan Bayazid II in the hope that Sultan Bayazid II would be pleased. He was robbed and killed. When the Circassian Sultan of Egypt heard of Jamshid's approach, he welcomed him with great respect and comforted him by keeping him as a guest like a king. After that, he left Egypt for Hajj Baytullah. After completing Hajj Baytullah and enjoying the happiness of visiting Mecca and Medina, Jamshid came to Egypt. The series continued and the Sultan of Egypt did not agree to take any action against his guest prince, rather he considered it his moral duty to give all kinds of assistance to Jamshid. He was supported by the army and Rs. Jamshid corrected his condition and left his mother and wife in Egypt to fight against Sultan Bayazid II. He entered through the country of Palestine and Syria from the southern and western part of Asia Minor. He left for the competition with his experienced army commander Ahmad Khidak. This time, Jamshid was defeated by some chieftains of Asia Minor in a fierce battle. By displeasing the rest of the army, they became the cause of the victory of Sultan Bayazid II. After being defeated this time, Jamshid felt ashamed while going to Egypt, and he said that now he should not show his face to the Sultan of Egypt and his wife and mother. There was no chance if he had gone to Egypt. Then surely after a few days such a time would have come that all the generals of the Ottoman Empire would have unanimously tried to take him from Egypt to Constantinople and put him on the throne of the empire. But Qadr had something else in mind. Instead of Egypt, Jamshid tried to somehow reach the European part of the Ottoman Empire and get help from the chieftains and the border Christian sultans to continue the war. Even after this defeat, his condition is very critical. He had gone and not more than 30 or 40 friends were with him, so he wanted to get a chance to take a breath somewhere and correct his condition. Was willing to do so, but he wrote to the Christian Parliament of Rhodes, asking if you would allow him to stay in your island for a few days and then go to Greece and Albania and get his country. As soon as he heard this message, Rhodes started crying. And these holy Christians thought of this intention of Jamshid as an unexpected blessing and thought of a devilish plan to put the black powder of humiliation and poverty on the faces of the Christian sultans. I would stay for a few days and think about the end and consequences of the affairs, and during this period the Sultan of Egypt would insistently call him back to Egypt, and the love of his mother and wife would draw him to Egypt. Wrote that we recognize you as the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, and your visit will be a source of honor and pride for us, and I invite you on behalf of our Parliament to definitely visit Rhodes to honor us. Splendid reception with the army and the royal guests. Thyrea, but very soon Prince Jamshed realized that he was not a Mahan, but a prisoner. Dobson first wrote a confession letter to Jamshid stating that if I become the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, I will grant all kinds of privileges to the sect of Titus, i.e. the rulers of Rhodes. Then he wrote to Sultan Bayazid that Jamshid is our if you wish to be at peace with us, give us freedom to enter and trade in all your ports, and we shall be exempted from all taxes, and none of your servants shall charge us any taxes in any place. Also, 45,000 Ottoman coins should be given to us annually to keep Jamshid under our protection and custody, and if you do not agree to our terms, we will let this prince free so that he can take the throne from you. Can try to take Sultan Bayazid II accepted all the demands of Dobson without Tamil, and continued to send 45,000 ducats, i.e. more than 3 lakh rupees to the people of Rhodes. That if you continue to send us 1.5 lakh rupees annually, then we will not hand over your son Jamshed to Sultan Bayazid II and will keep him safe and comfortable, otherwise Sultan Bayazid II would want to give us even more rupees. Yes, we will hand over to him, and it is obvious that he will get satisfaction by killing Jamshed. On hearing this message, Jamshed's mother sent 1.5 lakh rupees to Dobson as best she could and wrote that I will always continue to send this money because the people of Rhodes made Jamshed the best source of profit and did not refrain from lying and cheating in taking advantage of his source. They thought that Sultan Bayazid II or Sultan of Egypt would attack our country to get Jamshed, and this golden bird would go away, so they did not consider it appropriate to keep Jamshed in Rhodes, and sent him to the city of Nice, within the boundaries of the French Empire, and appointed a congregation to watch over and look after him. From Nice, they kept changing it in other cities, and during this period, they separated the prince's companions one after another until Jamshid was left alone. The girl Filipina Hilnia fell in love with him. After a few days he was separated from the city and taken to a special house that was built for him by the King of France. He took possession because he was a very valuable property, and everyone wanted to take possession of him. During this period, the King of France, the Pope of Rome and other Christian rulers wrote to D'Aubigné and requested to take Prince Jamshed into their possession. D'Aubigné, speaking to this, being well profited by the prince, and knowing the value of keeping it in his possession, either gave a clear answer to anyone, nor consented to give it, but sent letters, and he kept delaying the extension of the document, and setting the terms. Until 895 AH, Prince Jamshed remained in France and received rupees from the equal Sultan Bayazid II of Rhodes. Because he is in his country, so he called Jamshed. He suggested this and wrote to Adhar Jamshed's mother that send 1.5 lakh rupees for travel expenses, then I will call your son from France and bring your son to Egypt. Wrote to his men that Jamshed should be brought from France to Italy. After the rejection, Charles VIII allowed Jamshed to go to Italy on the condition that the Pope deposit 10,000 rupees as a guarantee that if the court allowed Jamshed to leave Italy without the permission of France, these 10,000 rupees would be confiscated. On the other hand, the Pope gave a guarantee to the rulers of Rhodes, the purpose of which was that if the benefits that were flowing to the government of Rhodes through Jamshed stopped by Jamshed coming to Italy, then the Pope would compensate for these losses. Therefore, in 895 AH Prince Jamshed entered the city of Rome, and here he was warmly welcomed and stayed in the royal palace of the Pope. The French ambassador accompanied the prince. When the French ambassador and Jamshed went to meet the Pope's deputies there, who were present at the court, repeatedly asked the prince to bow to the Pope in the same way as the French ambassador and other Christian chieftains bowed to the Pope. But the son of the Sultan Fatih somehow ignored this humiliation, and he was very careless, and sat down triumphantly to the Pope, and spoke to the Pope with great impudence and royal boldness, and said in the same conversation, "I wish to speak to you in some capacity." When it was done, Jamshed told the story of his sufferings and the complaint of the bad position and rude behavior of the Christian leaders and the separation of his mother and wife. His eyes filled with tears after hearing this story sat in the heart of the Pope. There was a big impact, and he also got teary-eyed. But after thinking about it, he said that it will not be useful for you to go to Egypt, and you will not be able to get your father's throne. The King of Hungary has also called you. If you go towards, then your goal will be easily fulfilled, and the best thing for you is that you leave the religion of Islam and accept the Christian religion. Then all of Europe will be with you, and you will easily reach Constantinople. You will become the king of the Ottoman Empire by making a procession on the throne. I will stumble, but I will not even entertain the thought of abandoning the religion of Islam. The Pope changed the tone of his speech as soon as he heard this and sent Jamshed away with a few pleasantries, and as he did in France. He used to live under detention, so he started living as a prisoner in Rome. After hearing about Jamshed's arrival in Rome, the Sultan of Egypt sent his ambassador to Rome. On hearing the news of Jamshed's arrival in Italy, Sultan Bayazid II sent his ambassador to the Pope with gifts to settle the matter with the Pope, because the Pope thought that he could send Jamshed by his own authority. It is not necessary for the Pope to fulfill the purpose of the people of Rhodes, wherever he may send. The same ambassador told Jamshed that how much rupees D'Aubigné had asked for travel expenses from his mother. Jamshed came to the service of the Pope with the ambassador, and the Pope filed a prosecution for fraud. The Pope ended the story by getting Jamshed from Dobson's lawyer for a very small sum of money. The Egyptian ambassador went back to Egypt unsuccessfully. But who had given Bayezid to Dobson settled the matter, and having obtained satisfaction from that side, returned to Constantinople, and the Pope made reasonable arrangements for the supervision of Jamshed, and he continued to live as a prisoner for 3 years afterwards. The Pope, whose name was Shanius, died, and a Pope named Iskandar was appointed in his place. If you continue to send the docket annually which has already been fixed, and if you send 300,000 dockets at once, then I can save you forever from the danger of Jamshed, that is, I can kill him. The name was George, and George spoke with great eloquence at the court of Constantinople, and displayed his ability so well that Sultan Bayazid wrote to the Pope recommending the ambassador, that it was worthy to make him his viceroy. This ambassador was still living in Constantinople when Charles VIII of France attacked Italy in 901 AH, and the reason for this attack was nothing else than that Prince Jamshed should no longer be allowed to remain in the possession of the modern Pope Alexander. When Charles VIII attacked, Pope Alexander fled from Rome and took refuge in the fortress of St. Angelo, and while fleeing, he also took Prince Jamshed with him, whom he considered more valuable than treasure. 11 days later, a meeting was held between the Pope and the King of France to determine the terms of the peace agreement. Charles offered that Jamshed would remain in my possession. Finally, in a house, Pope Charles, Jamshed, only 3 people gathered, and the Pope addressed Jamshed and inquired, "Why, Prince, you want to stay here, or the King of France?" Then Jamshed said, "I am no longer a prince, but a prisoner. Keep me where you will. I say nothing." Nevertheless, Charles VIII brought Jamshed with him to the King of France, and there he was kept by a chieftain with a suitable crowd. The guardian was appointed. Now all the hopes of Pope Iskandar to receive rupees from Sultan Bayazid II were dashed, although Sultan Bayazid II was willing to pay 300,000 ducats and had settled the matter with the Pope's ambassador. As he was greedy for rupees, he wrote to Sultan Bayazid II that although Jamshed has left Nilibs from here, I will definitely complete his work and deserve to receive rupees from you as agreed. After that, Pope Alexander chose a Greek barber for this job. This Greek barber had first converted to Islam and was named Mustafa, after which he apostatized. And coming to Italy, he reached the Pope by virtue of his profession of barbering. The Pope sent this Mustafa barber to Nilibs and gave him a pill of poison to be fed to Jamshed somehow. The effect of this poison was that the man did not die immediately, but fell ill and died after a few days, and no medicine could be effective. Even the constables did not consider it necessary to stop the barber from reaching such a respected prisoner because there could be no fear from this. After all, Mustafa took the opportunity and somehow cheated and fed Sharada Jamshed, who was poisoned, and the prince became incurably ill and became so weak that this condition I brought his mother's letter from Egypt to him, so he could not even open it, and read the letter, and the words came out of his mouth, "God, if these infidels want to try to harm the Muslims through me, then let me know." Today, and to protect the Muslims from their evil, he took further action that Jamshed was circumcised with a razor dipped in poison, and in this way the effect of poison was brought under his skin. On the same day, his soul left this body and flew to the rest of the world. This incident happened in 901 AH. The Christians sent him to Bayazid, and Bayazid buried him in Barusa. Sultan Bayazid II also paid the promised rupees to Pope Iskandar, and called this barber named Mustafa as his servant, and then promoted him to it. It is surprising that Sultan Bayazid II had killed this Turkish chief in the early days, who had robbed Jamshed on the way, but now, after 13 years, he killed this barber. Increased value and respect. Who had committed a more serious crime than this Turkish chief by killing Jamshid? The heart-wrenching story of Prince Jamshid in the series of Ottoman sultans has been recorded in this place with appropriate detail. A sharp light is thrown on the moral condition of the Christian kings of the and clearly the Christian traditions of how they captured Prince Jamshed, and how they obtained benefits from him, and how to control him. But they were greedy, and in fulfilling their material and spiritual goals, no one cared about decency, humanity, and the dignity of their royal position. Tari was, and they were so afraid that they were engaged in a humiliating attempt to prevent Sultan Osmani from raising an army on them through Prince Jamshed. Must be attracted who succeeded his father Sultan Muhammad Khan to the conqueror of Constantinople.